Hey, it's Sam. Today we're going to be making this, a shou-sugi-ban coffee table. This is a really easy project for beginner welders. I'm a terrible welder myself, so if I can do it, you can do it. Don't forget to stick around for the whole video because I'm going to show you little tips and tricks that I do throughout the video. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. The first thing I'm going to get stuck into today is the tabletop itself. For the top I'm going to use pine. It's cheap and you literally can get it anywhere. I got a 200 by 75mm thick sleeper and it came in a 3 meter length. I chopped it down, getting 2 lengths at 1100mm. I wanted a rather long and narrow table because the couch it sits in front of is quite long itself. The timber came pretty rough, so I had to throw it through the planer to get the top and the bottom nice and smooth. The planer is probably one of my least favourite tools because it creates such a mess. And as Mum said, keep your room tidy. I brought my timber back to my workbench and used my electric planer to get the sides nice and flat, making sure to wear a mask. As you'll see, planers shoot timber out of everywhere. I really went slow with the planer because the width of my blade was only about 5mm wider than the width of the plank. I'm trying not to take off too much material as I want to keep the top as wide as possible. When designing my projects, I usually have a rough idea, then I usually design on the fly. So I decided to make the table 450mm high. So my cut list was 6 at 400mm, which is the width, and 4 at 450mm, which was the height. Just a little tip, I use crayons when marking steel. You can also use paint pens, but crayons remind me of being a kid. If you saw my last video, I was using a grinder to cut all my pieces. So I decided to invest in a metal cut-off saw. This improved my accuracy so much and took me so little time. I had to stand to cut some of these pieces. I didn't have enough strength, so I had to stand and push down pretty hard. To my defense though, this steel was 6mm thick and generally speaking, you usually cut a lot thinner than that. Instead of sliding this piece of steel down and cutting it right there, I'm going to rotate it so when I make the cut, it leaves a small amount of overhang. But don't forget, since you've been cutting on this side, it's really hot, so make sure to grab, I use a welder's glove, but you can use any high temp glove and flip it around because that will protect you from the heat and you can make your next cut. After making all my cuts, I got my grinder with a flap disc and I deburred all my edges. This makes welding a little bit easier, and especially when using a magnet you don't catch all the little burrs on the edge. Using a welding magnet and a hammer, I lined up my edges to make it a lot easier to get my initial tack welds. I'm really new to welding, so if anyone has any tips and tricks, it would be much appreciated. I had to repeat this same process for the other set of legs. After welding, I got my flap disc out and I grinded all the welds nice and smooth. I measured in 100mm from each side. That's where the start of my legs are going to be. It was a tight fit, so I used a rubber mallet to persuade it into place. I clamped the legs into place and I flipped the table over, ready to weld the underside of the table. I got my flap disc out and I grinded all my welds smooth. The timber was already pretty smooth, but I went over it again with 240 grit. I used a portable butane gas torch for my shou-sugi-ban. I know most people will say this is not the proper technique for doing shou-sugi-ban, they really burn it and make it black, but I just want the effect of bringing out the grain, so this is what I've come up with, and I really like it. After using the shou-sugi-ban technique, I flipped the table over, drilled some holes, and screwed in some screws to give the tabletop more support. To finish the tabletop, I used a satin one-coat polyurethane. I used a foam brush to apply this, it works really well. And to seal the legs, I used a beeswax compound. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Also, here are a couple of my other videos if you want to have a look. Thanks.